very much, Mr. Deputy Chairman, for allowing me to speak on the State Bank Amendment Bill 2010, which is proposed to amend the State Bank of India Act 1955. Sir, we are all aware State Bank of India is the country's largest commercial bank. It has done yeoman service to this nation over the years in reaching out to many backward areas, to reaching out to the unbanked areas, in reaching out to the people in the villages. And by and large, over the years, this bank has been considered as the primary bank which implements the Government of India's policies. It has been considered as the bank of the government. It has carried out many functions which the government over the years needed to do to carry out its fiscal responsibilities. However, I feel very sad that the Government of India does not wish to retain or does not wish to allow the State Bank of India to function as a commercial bank competing in the international arena. For a bank of the size of State Bank of India to be able to compete, to be able to create an impact in the world scenario of banking, it is very important that the State Bank of India is given freedom to operate. It's given freedom to work in the commercial interests of depositors and the bank and shareholders, all stakeholders of the bank. It is still even more unfortunate that over the years, the government has sought gradually to bring more and more controls into the working of State Bank of India. And that, sir, is going to be the primary focus of my intervention today. At the outset, the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned that the bill has come after 4 years. It was first introduced in June 2006 or December 2006. Sir, I feel very sad that a commercial bank which needs decisions to be taken fast, quickly, decisions which impact its day-to-day working, it has to take 3.5 years for the Government of India to bring that bill to the House and carry out the necessary amendments, which they have themselves in their statement of objects and reasons mentioned are necessary for the smooth functioning and flexibility in the management of the bank. In fact, the Honorable Finance Minister, in his intervention in an earlier debate on the 2nd of August in the Lok Sabha, has raised certain apprehensions about the working of the standing committees. I mentioned it on the 9th in a debate in which I was participating. I shall not repeat the whole context here. But yes, I do agree with the Honorable Finance Minister that the standing committees of Parliament sometimes take inordinately long to approve or decide on what to do with legislation. And especially for economic legislation, legislation which impacts economic issues, banking issues, certainly it is important that decisions are taken fast. But I would like to know that even after the Standing Committee gave its recommendations, sometime in 2008, that is what the bill has mentioned, then why did the government take 2 years after that to bring that bill to Parliament, to bring that act into Parliament? These are 2 valuable years. I don't know what the impact of that is on the working of banks as important, as large, as widespread as the State Bank of India. But even after the Standing Committee, maybe after 1.5 years, took a decision, I feel the government of the day should have brought this bill in much earlier, should have acted upon the recommendations of the Standing Committee and not let this element of uncertainty prevail in the banking system. Sir, there are many dynamic issues while the working of a bank goes on. Banks' working cannot be monitored on a day-to-day basis by the central government. Unfortunately for us, the State Bank of India is the only bank which is to date monitored and administered under the direct control and supervision of the central government. The State Bank of India is the only bank, sir, which still has a State Bank of India Act and is not covered under the Banking Regulation Act of, I believe, 1959. It is very important that all banks should have a level playing field. Why should we differentiate in the case of State Bank of India when it has to compete in the public arena with international banks, foreign banks, private banks, and even public sector banks of India. It is important that we give a level playing field, and now we should review whether State Bank of India needs a separate act at all, or we should allow the Banking Regulation Act provisions to prevail in the working of the State Bank of India. I believe if at all the government chooses, despite my clear contention that the government should now do away with this act, if at all they believe this act should continue, we should not do this kind of piecemeal amendments to the act, some 10, 12, 15 clauses being amended. That act needs an overhaul. That act needs to come within the purview of international banking norms that prevail in India and worldwide today. Sir, the Honorable Finance Minister has mentioned that they would like to increase the equity share capital of the company, of the State Bank of India. I think it's very necessary that a bank of the size of State Bank should be able to compete with foreign banks and will certainly need more capital in the days to come. We are conscious that with the coming in of Basel II norms, with the coming in of new prudential norms of provisioning, banks will require to enhance their equity capital and their net worth on a regular basis. In fact, the State Bank of India went in for a very successful rights issue about 2 years or 3 years ago, in which a substantial amount of money was mopped up from the public markets, and the central government also subscribed to about 10,000 crores of equity capital as their part of the rights issue. I think that has enhanced the bank's capital to a great extent. Why cannot the government of India continue on the same path and continue to have rights issues which are in the interests of the public, which are in the interests of the central government, and continue to enhance the capital as and when required, sharing the benefit of growth, sharing the benefit of higher valuations with the shareholders, the public shareholders, and with the government of India. I don't see any reason for them to allow preferential allotment or private placement of shares, which this bill proposes to allow. That is a very disturbing feature in this bill, sir. I would urge the Honorable Finance Minister to reconsider why there is need to allow preferential allotment and private placement of equity shares of a national asset such as State Bank of India. Why is their government thinking, why is the government feeling there is a need to dilute the ownership of the bank to private parties, to foreign institutions on a bulk basis, on a preferential basis, or on a private placement basis? This, I believe, sir, is completely contrary to stated public policy, and this bill should, if at all it allows the bank to give equity shares and preference shares, it should be only by way of either a rights issue, which is in the interest of everybody. The government also participates, and government also gets the benefit of the growth of the bank. But if at all they want to do another issue, they can do a follow-on public issue. There is absolutely no need to do a preferential issue or a private placement, which will be fraught with all sorts of dangers, because we do not know who will be the preferred people. How will the government of the day decide that one party is preferred to the other party? There will be all sorts of allegations on management, on the Reserve Bank, on the government in selecting, or a bias in selecting people in preference to the others. And I believe that's a very dangerous trend. The Honorable Minister should reconsider the preferential allotment and the private placement proviso in this clause, which allows the bank to raise preference capital and equity capital. Sir, in this respect, I would also like to make one small observation. Most Indian banks, whenever they are required to raise capital, whether by the form of equity shares, preference shares, and they are also allowed to issue bonds, which come into Tier 1, Tier 2 capital of the banks and go towards capital adequacy. Most Indian banks have a sort of a club amongst themselves. So if one bank is issuing shares, all the other banks subscribe to those shares. And this goes on. So you scratch my back, I scratch your back. All the banks turn by turn invest in each other's equity capital, pick up the bonds issued by each other. So if you go to see the Indian banking system as a whole, I believe the capital adequacy in the banking system as a whole is grossly inadequate. Because ultimately they're all got to protect the investors' interest, got to protect the depositors' interest. It is important that they raise capital. It is very important that they issue preference capital, equity capital, bonds. But I think there should be some directive from the government that there should be genuine capital in the market. It should not be something which is raised from within the banking system. One bank picks up the equity of the other, and so on and so forth. Sir, one of the most disturbing features of this bill, on which I would like to draw the attention of this august House, is the provision of the central government to supersede the management of the State Bank of India at its whims and fancy. It has been provided on page 5 of the proposed act that where the central government, on the recommendation of the Reserve Bank, is satisfied that in the public interest for preventing the affairs of the State Bank being conducted in a manner detrimental to the interests of the depositors or the State Bank, or for securing the proper management of the State Bank, it is necessary to do so. The central government may, for reasons recorded in writing. So my objection to this is, it is possible that there may be a problem with the working of a bank, and certainly there should be an authority which can act in the event there is a problem. But I disagree with the central government taking that power in their hands. The Reserve Bank of India is the regulator in this case. The Reserve Bank of India monitors the working of all banks. Reserve Bank of India monitors and regulates the day-to-day affairs, the bank management. They have a nominee on the board of the bank, which it is, I believe, they are trying to remove, but I'll come to that later. With all these kind of controls that the Reserve Bank is supposed to exercise on the working of the bank, I don't see any reason why the central government wants to take the power of being able to remove the management of the bank, supersede the board of directors of the bank, and remove the managing directors and the chairman. This will lead to a lot of uncertainty in the working of the bank, which is not good for the banking system, sir. And it will also open up the bank management to tremendous pressures from the executive and the political authority in Delhi, because they will be bound by all sorts of instructions and directions from the central government with the fear, you don't listen to me, I can throw you out. It is important that the central government allows the regulator to carry on its functions and not assert the powers of regulators into the hands of the central government. And we are seeing more and more of that happening in the recent days, and it is a matter of concern, and I hope to draw the attention of this House, and I hope the members will also appreciate that this type of interference in the working of professionally managed commercial organizations is not in the public interest, not in the interests of shareholders and depositors, and not in the interests of this nation. Further, sir, on the next clause 2 of this subsection 24A, 24A2, the central government may, in consultation with the Reserve Bank of India, on suspension of the central board, appoint an administrator. Fortunately, they are saying not an officer of the central or state government, who has experience in law, finance, banking, economics. Excellent. That part is okay. But the central government may appoint an administrator. What happens in the case of any other bank, sir? In any other bank, if there is a problem, the Reserve Bank of India interferes and appoints an administrator. The central government does not do it. Why should, in the case of State Bank of India, the central government want to appoint an administrator, a person of their choice, a person who will be amenable to their pressure, a person whom they can direct, and they are specifically providing in the next line, sir, subsection 3, the central government may issue such directions to the administrator as it may consider necessary, and the administrator shall be bound to follow such directions. Kindly note, sir, the administrator shall be bound to follow the directions of the central government. This, sir, in my opinion, is a very, very dangerous trend. You don't like somebody in the seat of power there. You may not agree with some of his commercial decisions. After all, he's a professional you have selected in the first place to become a chairman or to become a managing director of that bank. But if you find his decisions are uncomfortable to you, you choose to throw him out. You choose to appoint a person who is amenable to you as an administrator, and then you give him directions, ordering him to follow those directions, because he shall be bound to follow those directions. I think the law has very dangerous portent for the future, and the House should take note of this. Sir, the Honourable Minister in his amendment to the bill has mentioned that he has brought in some qualifications for elected directors. I heartily welcome those qualifications, sir. It is necessary that a bank as important, as large as the State Bank of India is not run by a board which is not full of competent people. I think that's a very good move, sir. But I fail to understand why there is also not a provision that the central government, which appoints directors on the board of the State Bank of India also, shall have some prescribed qualifications of the directors that the government chooses to appoint on the board of the bank. In recent years, in the last 4-5 years, we have seen directors being appointed on the boards of the bank purely for political considerations. I am not against appointment of directors by the central government. I have myself been a director on the board of a bank or 2 banks as a nominee of the central government. But you have to have certain criteria. I have also seen other directors being appointed with no qualification whatsoever, with absolutely no contribution on the bank's board. And I believe it will be in the interest of the government to appoint directors. They may have political background. I am not against that, because it's not as if to say that the politicians cannot have qualifications. But they should have qualifications which are necessary for the effective running and administration of the board of the State Bank of India, along with whatever other criteria the Honourable Minister and the government would choose to put on the directors. I'm sorry, my mouth gets a little parched, sir. Sir, there is another provision in this which I would like to draw your kind attention to. There is a procedure to elect directors in this bank. In fact, in all the public sector banks, sir. Unfortunately, what is happening when the independent directors are elected by the public? The bank management selects a few people whom he feels will be in tandem with the bank management, with the chairman and his executive authorities. Selects a few people, asks them to fill up the vacancies or to become a candidate in the election in the bank's board, and then gently nudges or persuades all the large institutional shareholders, which is why I mentioned earlier that it is not proper for banks to rotate all the shares within themselves, the major bulk of their shareholding. So when large shareholding is held by each other in each other's banks, they're able to nudge those shareholders and tell them, you vote for these 4 candidates. This is my panel. And it's usually called the chairman's panel. And sir, if the Honourable Finance Minister investigates this for the last 10-12 years, he will find that systematically the position of independent directors has been undermined. Candidates or a panel of candidates selected by the management has got elected, and any independent director who wishes to come in with the support of small shareholders has never got an opportunity to be on the board of a bank. In this respect, I would urge the Honourable Minister to consider bringing in some sort of provisions for directors who are elected by small shareholders. Small shareholders could be shareholders holding less than 100 shares, less than 500,000 shares. I leave that for the government to decide. But there must be some provision for shareholders, of small shareholders, to protect the interests of these shareholders. Sir, the provisions of this bill have sought to eliminate the position of the Vice Chairman of the State Bank of India. For that matter, they have never appointed a Vice Chairman in so many years. as Mr. Honorable Home Minister said, he may choose to blame it that in the 6 years that the NDA was in power, they also did not appoint. But that's not a matter of a point over here. The issue is that over the years, a vice chairman has never been appointed. But I feel the vice chairman was a very important position in the bank. If we had a position of the vice chairman, in the absence of the chairman, and a person who's holding the position of the chairman of State Bank of India is often required to travel. He's probably out 100 days in a year out of the country. He has 32 offices all over the country, all over the world. And he's supposed to travel, look after that. If there was a vice chairman, there would be a clear line of authority by which the bank could function. What do we see now? We see a situation where there will be 4 managing directors as per this bill instead of the present 2. And it's a welcome step. To have 4 managing directors is good because it's a large bank. It is growing day by day. It will have millions and crores of depositors, and their interest needs to be protected. So having 4 managing directors is welcome. But between the 4 managing directors and the chairman, there should be a clear demarcation of authority. There should be clarity on roles and functions. And in that respect, having a vice chairman would have brought in some semblance of a pyramidal structure. Otherwise, the senior-most managing director, in fact, the bill does not provide for the senior-most managing director. It provides for the managing director chosen by the chairman to act as chairman in his absence. It is not even the senior-most, and I think I would contest that. If at all it has to be amongst the 4 MDs, it should be the senior-most managing director. But more importantly, it would be better if there was a vice chairman or a person designated as vice chairman and managing director who would hold office or would officiate in the absence of the chairman. I think it would bring functional improvement in the day-to-day operations of the bank. So there is a provision in the State Bank of India Act. This is, sir, not relevant to this bill right away, but I'm talking out of my experience on the board there. There are 14 local boards in the State Bank of India. There's a central board. They have 14 circles and 14 local boards. Sir, in my experience, those 14 local boards have completely ceased to have any relevance. It's a cost on the bank. It is probably only a method to oblige a few people to appoint them as directors of these local boards. They are carrying out absolutely no function. The meetings are held sparsely once in 6 months, 8 months, when there is enough agenda collected. The agenda, sir, comprises of things which are executive responsibilities of the bank's officials. By and large, they are just okay, and they rest the local boards. Again, over the years, most years there have been no people appointed on the local boards, and without that, the bank has functioned equally well, if not better. So there should be a rethink, which brings me to my original point, sir, that the State Bank of India Act either needs to be abolished and let the Banking Regulation Act come in, or do a complete overhaul of the Act. Don't tinker with the law which is incomplete, sir. So there is one small clause which has surreptitiously come in, which I think the Honorable Finance Minister may like to review. It is not very clear on a plain reading of the law, but in the last point of the statement of objects, it has been mentioned that workman director's tenure is sought to be restricted to 3 years. That is fine. In fact, if at all there is a restriction on the workmen directors, I believe there should be a similar restriction on the political appointee directors and a similar restriction on the independent directors. Why should workmen directors be different from the other directors? They have all the same powers, the same authority, and the same responsibility as directors on the board of the bank. So I think they should all be contemporaneous. Their tenure should be the same. But if you are providing this, that workmen directors should have a restricted 3-year tenure, then, sir, till the next man is appointed, you will have a situation where the board will have no workmen director. Earlier, the provision was workmen director continues till such time as you appoint the next director. I think the workman's interest should be protected. My friends from the left would probably harp more on it than me, but I think the workman's interest should be protected, and the workman's director should be allowed to continue in office till such time as the next director is appointed, which is the condition for political appointees and other directors. I was told by some colleagues and my very senior leader and leader of the opposition that in my last and maiden address, I tended to repeat myself and be a little long. So I will rest my case here. I think I've made all the major points that I wanted to make on this subject. And I hope the Honorable Finance Minister will not misunderstand any of what I've said. I think it's in the interest of the bank. I have personal knowledge and experience. It's a wonderful bank, sir. Please allow it to function independently. Please allow it to function without the pressures of interference on a day-to-day basis. In fact, I wanted to make one other point. It is not relevant to this bill, sir, but I'll take this opportunity.
पीयूष जी अभी एक और बोलने वाले हैं, समय खत्म
अच्छा,
हुआ।
मुझे बोला गया था हमारी
नहीं,
तरफ
अभी
से।
एक और।
Just a small intervention, sir. I think there must be a review of the amount of pressure on commercial decisions of the banks that they have. They have the pressure of CVC and CBI and all sorts of problems. Commercial decisions of the bank should be respected for the context in which they are taken at that point of time. They cannot be allowed to function with the kind of pressure and the kind of threat that they are always on for any failure in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence. Thank you.
धन्यवाद पीयूष जी। श्री प्रवीण राष्ट्रपाल।
Thank you very much, Chairman. I am here to support the State Bank of India Act 95 Amendment Bill. I am supporting this